Hello and welcome. You guys have chosen well for Kansas Day. And oh, by the way, happy Kansas Day to you. Hope you've had a good Kansas Day adventure and have learned a fun fact or two that helps you remember how cool it is to live in the great Sunflower State. And we are dialing in this time from Kansas University at the Robert Dole Institute of Politics with my good friend Julie. Hey, Julie.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Happy Kansas Day to you, Julie.
Thanks, you too.
And then we have another friend we're going to bring on the screen. This is Travis. Hey, Travis.
Hi, everybody. Happy Kansas Day.
Oh, we're so glad you're here to be with us today. And teachers, students, go ahead and jump into the chat and tell us where you're dialing in from. We're just curious to know what schools, what districts, what towns we can send a shout out to. So definitely pop in and let us know where you're coming in from. And Travis is going to have some extra superpowers today. So if you have questions about some of the content that Julie posts on the screen, just post in a question and then he'll be in there to respond in the chat. So be ready, get your hands in that space. Just remember, good digital citizenship skills. We want to keep those questions on point with what's being covered in class. All right. With that being said, Julie, we have got to know some more goodness about Senator Dole. Are you ready to take it over?
Let's go.
All right, it's all you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Kansas Day. And today, our title of this program that you are attending is Doling Out the Facts, Trivia on Kansas's Legendary Senator. Now, do you guys have any ideas on who the Dole Institute could be named after? I got some clues for you on the screen there. If you say Senator Bob Dole, then you are correct. And here at the Dole Institute, here's a little picture of our building. We definitely want to celebrate Kansas Day. Happy 164th birthday. And even though it is the middle of January, or the end of January, here at the Dole Institute in Lawrence, Kansas, we have sunny sunflowers. And so this is a picture of our building outside right now. The snow is melting, and we have almost 400 sunflowers on our lawn to celebrate Kansas Day. Now, here at the Dole Institute of Politics, we do a lot of really cool stuff. And if we would go inside, we would be able to see the world's largest American flag stained glass window. Cool. And we've been here for over 20 years, and our mission is to support bipartisanship and civic participation and civil discourse. And basically, those are just fancy words for saying we need to work together and we need to have conversations and we need to be involved in our community. And so it's really important to vote in our elections and have discussions, even if maybe somebody that we don't agree with all the time. It's still really important to do those things. So we are named after Senator Bob Dole from Kansas, but I also want to give a shout out to Senator Elizabeth Dole. Yes, he is. This is his wife. She was also a senator. She is from North Carolina, so I think she's celebrating Kansas Day from afar. Both Senators Bob and Elizabeth Dole lived in Washington, D.C. for many, many years. And so here's a couple pictures of them throughout the years. But at the Dole Institute, we do those things in our mission of bipartisanship and civic participation and civil discourse. And we do that 3 different ways here. So we invite speakers to come and speak at our public events. So for instance, top left corner, we have President Bill Clinton. He has been here actually a few times. But just last week, we hosted two Kansas former governors, former Governor Kathleen Sebelius, also known as Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, and former Governor Mike Hayden. And so we do lots of public programs throughout the year. The second part of the Dole Institute is we have a museum based on the life of Senator Bob Dole. So if you come visit me, you can see that beautiful stained glass window, but also learn about Senator Dole's biography and what happened in his life and how we can learn from it. And then the third part of the Institute is my most favorite, actually. And that's where I am right now, is I'm in the archives. Have you guys ever heard of the word archive? I wonder what it is. We got a lot of boxes. Huh. Do you guys ever go to the library? Yeah? Okay. So we're kind of like a library, except you can't check anything out of the building. Everything stays here because we have all of Senator Bob Dole's papers and photographs and magazines and objects. So if you were to imagine, if you were to keep all of your paper and homework assignments and tests from third grade and fourth grade and fifth grade, and you keep them and organize them, by the time you graduate high school, do you think you'd have a pretty cool archive of stuff? Yeah, those papers. It can include art projects, sports trophies, things that are important to you. Yeah. So we keep all of Senator Bob Dole's stuff. But we also want people to learn about it and use it. So, for instance, these pictures down here are students that are actually getting to touch and look at the real primary source material. So there's lots of cool things to do at the Dole Institute. So I invite you to come and visit us in Lawrence, Kansas. But first, we're going to learn a little bit more about Senator Bob Dole. But we got to take it back to talking about government. So just a quick intro of what are the three branches of government. Does anybody know? I gave you some hints. Legislative branch. That is the branch of government that makes laws. That's called the Congress. And there's two parts of Congress. We're going to talk about them. There's also the executive branch. That's the President of the United States. And they carry out the law. Then the third branch of government is the judicial branch, and they evaluate the laws. And that is the Supreme Court. Now, we have the three branches of government at our state level and our federal level, and to a lesser extent at our local level, but definitely at our state and federal, where we have our Congress and Supreme Court and the president. Okay, question. Where is our state capital? Does anybody know? Topeka, you are correct. If you ever visit Topeka, maybe you can climb up all those stairs to get to the very top of the Capitol Dome. That would be pretty awesome. So that's the Kansas state capital. Where is the United States capital? Anybody know that one? Washington, D.C. is correct. And here it looks very similar to the Kansas state capitol, but it's a lot bigger. It's it's white in color. And then we also see these two ends of the building there. And that houses the two parts of Congress. And we're going to talk about the two parts of Congress in one of our trivia questions, actually. Okay, you guys ready for trivia time? Let's learn about Kansas's native son, Senator Bob Dole. Question 1, true or false? Bob Dole is from Russell, Kansas. Let's see. You guys got a guess? How about true? Senator Bob Dole is a native Kansan and grew up in the small town of Russell. And Russell is about 3 hours west of where I am right now in Lawrence, Kansas. And Senator Dole's hometown was very important to him. It definitely shaped his character and his virtues. He never forgot the people of his hometown and how they supported him throughout his career. So we know that Senator Dole was a senator. We're going to learn a little bit more about his life as we go on today. But he worked in our United States Congress for a really, really long time. So he was one of our political leaders. And early on in his life, he actually worked at Dawson's Drugstore, which is a pharmacy, and they also had a soda fountain. And so he learned a lot of his wit and banter from slinging drinks at that drugstore soda fountain. He's a very funny guy. So he definitely loved his hometown. So here at the Dole Institute, if you were to come in the front door, you would see this gray rectangle on the floor, and it's made of granite. Now, I think there's something special about this rectangle, though, right? If we look a little closer, I see 3 little discs on it. I wonder why those are important. So these are actually the 3 most important Kansas cities to Senator Bob Dole. So we got Russell. We just learned it's his hometown, so that's really, really important to him. We also have Topeka here. What's cool about Topeka? You guys just told me it's our Kansas state capital, so that's pretty cool. Senator Bob Dole, before he was a United States Senator, was actually in the Kansas House of Representatives that worked in Topeka because he worked in the capital. So another important city to his life. And then the third disc is Lawrence. That is where the Dole Institute is located, so automatically it's going to be awesome. But Senator Dole went to the University of Kansas for a couple years, and he was a really fit and athletic young man. He was actually on 3 different sports teams. So, and Lawrence also definitely shaped his life before he went into the war. So it's very important to remember where you come from. He always remembered the people of Russell. So here are some pictures from the archive from his time in Russell. So we have his picture from high school, looking good in that suit. We also have him in a few different campaign poses later on in his life, but I want to go down to this bottom right-hand corner picture. So this is in front of the Dole family home in Russell, and he's standing with his mother. And this is after his war injury. We're going to talk about that. But the 3 other pictures are from campaigning and campaigning for elections. So he had to run in many different elections, whether he was in the House of Representatives or the Senate. And this is on the bottom left is a picture outside the Dole family home when he was running for vice president in 1976. And then on the top is a billboard that was outside of the town limits of Russell for many, many years. And then the middle picture we have in the archives is him campaigning in Russell. And I think that downtown area looks pretty familiar from that picture a couple slides ago. All right, trivia question number 2. Senator Dole was wounded in the Civil War and awarded a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. True or false? What do we think? So we know he was in a war. Well, let's think about our history and our dates. This is actually false. It wasn't the Civil War. Senator Bob Dole was wounded during the Second World War, which is also called World War II. So World War II took place in the 1940s. The Civil War was a super long time ago. That was like 1860s. So Senator Dole was wounded during World War II. And he was a young man, about 20 years old, and he was severely injured in the hills of Italy. And going back to our trivia question, yes, he was awarded a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his valor and courage on the battlefield. And he got hurt really, really, really bad and almost died a few times, actually. In his battalion, he is here on the very, very far left in that tan jacket. And you can see another picture of him in his helmet. And he was in the 10th Mountain Division, which was in the United States Army. And he got hit in the back and the shoulder with shrapnel and laid out on the battlefield for over 8 hours before they could come and get him. And Senator Dole actually, when he later in his life, he visited that area many times. And so this is a black and white picture, so you can make a guess that it's a pretty old picture, because yes, it was in that time period in the 1940s. But then this picture is relatively recent, probably about 15 years ago. And in my map, if you've ever heard of Rome, Italy, that's in the middle. But Senator Dole was wounded outside of Bologna, Italy, which is a little farther north. But let's hear how he was wounded.
He tried to advance. I remember my radio man, Corporal Sims, being hit. I remember dragging him back into a foxhole. Then I remember trying to move up a little bit, and then I felt a sting in my shoulder. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't move my arms, my legs.
I crawled out and started dragging men back. The lieutenant was farthest away. He lay there with his arms stretched out over his head. When I pulled it, he gave a yell and passed out. He was so much bigger than me, but I managed to drag him and roll him back. He was bleeding badly, but we had no choice. We gave him a shot of morphine and moved on.
9 hours later, Lieutenant Dole was removed to a battlefield hospital. A shell had smashed his right shoulder, punctured a lung, and damaged vertebrae, leaving him paralyzed from the neck down. The surgeons thought he was going to die. When he didn't, he was put in a cast from his chin to his legs and shipped home. His mother moved in across the street to take care of him. She had to feed him with a spoon and hold cigarettes to his lips, seemingly the only pleasure left to him. As he regained movement in his limbs, the cast was slowly chipped away. Then, at the end of June, he developed an uncontrollable fever. Police sirens escorted his father all the way from Russell when his son wasn't expected to last the night. Penicillin finally lowered his temperature enough to remove an infected kidney. Dole started his recovery all over again. By fall, the cast was gone, and he was sitting on the edge of the bed, trying to calm the tremors enough to take a few steps.
They got me out of bed one day, and the bathroom door was open. There was a mirror on the far wall of the shaving cabinet. I couldn't believe that was Bob Dole. So I didn't look in the mirror. I still don't look in the mirror.
Only his right arm was in traction now, and the doctors allowed him to go back to Russell on a stretcher. His parents rented a hospital bed and put him in their own front bedroom. His mother waited on him hand and foot, afraid they had only brought him home to die. Embarrassed to be seen by all but his closest friends, Dole was determined to recover the body he had lost. The biggest, strongest kid from Russell High now weighed 122 pounds. By Thanksgiving, Dole had moved to a special Army hospital that performed modern miracles in orthopedics. Before Christmas, however, a blood clot developed in his lungs. Confined to bed round the clock, he grew steadily weaker. His only hope was an experimental drug called streptomycin. At the beginning of March, his family traveled to be with him and sign a release for its use. 4 days later, he sat up and asked his brother to go downtown and get a milkshake. By summer, he was back in Russell.
All right. So,
Hey, Julie, are you there?
yeah.
Hey, awesome. Just want to tell everyone thanks for all these wonderful comments. They're really inspired and in awe of Senator Dole's sacrifice and courage there.
Cool. Yeah, he had a tough road ahead of him when he was injured, but he didn't let that stop him. He continued to serve his country, and so one cool connection about things in the archive is we can actually see his handwriting before his World War II injury, like when he was in high school and college, and you can see that on the top blue part. And then after his World War II injury, does it look a little different? Yeah, it's kind of slanty. It shifts downward. Yeah, so that day in Italy in April of 1945 changed his life forever. And he lost the use of his right arm. So he actually had to learn how to use his left arm to do everything, his left hand. So I want you guys to think. If you're at your school desk and you have a piece of paper in front of you, or even if you don't have any paper, maybe can you try to draw your name on your desk or with a pencil with your non-dominant hand. So for instance, I'm right-handed, so I have kind of trouble using my left hand to write. But I want you to try to use your non-dominant hand to write your name. Think you can do that? Maybe, is this going to be easy or hard? Was there any specific questions you had, Travis, in the chat?
Not any specific questions, just some observations. Here's one that's really interesting. Someone commenting how amazing his mom was too.
Yeah. Yep. His mom definitely stood by him. His parents were Doran and Bina Dole, and we actually have the Russell window, which you're going to see in a picture here pretty soon, is dedicated to their honor. So this is just an example of how his handwriting changed before and after his World War II injury. Okay, you guys ready for the next question? Senator Dole represented the people of Kansas for over 35 years in Congress. You think that's true or false? 35 years is a long time. But it is true. He spent 8 years in the United States House of Representatives and over 27 years in the United States Senate. Mini trivia question. Does anybody know how long a House of Representatives term is? 2 years. So he did 4 terms in the House of Representatives. And anybody know how long a Senate term is? You're elected for the Senate, you are elected for 6 years. And when he worked for our country on behalf of Kansas, he worked in the United States Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Now, recap, what are the 2 parts of Congress called again? The House of Representatives and the Senate. The House is elected for 2 years, and the Senate is elected for 6 years. There are 2 senators from each state, and we have how many states? 50. So there are a total of 100 senators, because there's 2 senators from each state, and we have 50 states. Now, House of Representatives gets a little more complicated. It is based on population. And so it's based on the United States Census. That happens every 10 years, where people are counted in the right place at the right time. And we find out how many people actually live in different areas of the United States. And it varies by different states. So California has a lot of people live there, so they're going to have more representatives, versus Kansas, who has relatively lower amount of people living in Kansas. But we have great representatives to represent us. And so that number, if you were total all the states, that one's equals 435. Now the picture on the bottom right is the Senate chamber. So that is where those 100 senators come to work. So 35 years in our United States Congress, and he was able to meet a lot of different people and get a lot of stuff done and work together. So for instance, this picture on the left, Senator Dole is shaking hands with another famous Kansan. Anybody know who that is? President Dwight or Ike Eisenhower. And you notice which hand Senator Dole is shaking with? Is he using his right hand? He's using his left hand. You can see his right hand is at his side. So remember, that is the arm, the hand that got injured in World War II. So we always remember people who offered their left hand to shake. These other pictures are just showing in front of the Capitol, and Senator Dole, right here in the middle, was able to even meet important people around the world. So Pope John Paul II in the Vatican, he's met Queen Elizabeth, the Dalai Lama, lots of really cool, interesting people.
And hey, Miss Julie, we do have a question here. Did Senator Dole in Congress, did he just make laws for Kansas, or did he make it for the all the states?
He made it for all the states. And actually, that leads me to my next question. True or false? Bob Dole was majority leader of the Senate, which was part of the legislative branch. So leader seems like a pretty important job. True. He was the Republican leader for over 11 years. So that means he's the highest ranking Republican in the Senate, and he made lots of decisions for our country. And we can see those decisions in the Dole archives. For instance, in this document here on the bottom, we see on his letterhead for his press release, it says Senate Republican leader. So he was able, number one guy in the Senate, is able to make lots of cool decisions that are really important. And this document actually talks about the Senate recognizing Kansas treasures, like preserving the town of Nicodemus, Kansas, as a National Historic Site. So he was instrumental in that and a whole bunch of other things too. And it's important to work with a lot of people because in our government, there are two major political parties. There are Democrats and Republicans, and we want them to work together and find that common ground. So it's important to work with a lot of different people. For instance, here you can see Senator Dole using that left hand to shake hands too. Okay, next question. Bob Dole was the 43rd president of the United States. I think, sadly, that's false. He aspired to be president and got super, super close, but was defeated by President Bill Clinton in 1996. He actually ran for president 3 times, and he won the Republican Party nominee in 1996. So he debated and campaigned against President Bill Clinton. So here in the archives, we have bumper stickers and pins and buttons. Also, a lot of photographs, like 25,000 photographs are down here. Like this one where he is campaigning for president. And when you campaign for president, at least in 1996, you got to use a really cool plane, and you had to do a lot of work during the election. And then here's the Electoral College map. So people vote in an election, and that's called the popular vote. But then states, there's Electoral College, and so that's how we get this red and blue map. And so we see Kansas here in the middle. It is red because it voted for Senator Bob Dole in the 1996 election. But it wasn't enough to win against President Bill Clinton.
Here's a great question, Miss Julie. Someone wants to know, what's the coolest thing that you can see in the museum?
Aha. Coolest thing is probably the world's largest American flag stained glass window. Yep. Pretty cool. It's over 900 pieces of glass, and it's over 29 feet tall. So you definitely got to come visit me now and see it. So a president serves for how many years? 4. So we have House of Representatives, that's 2. President serves for 4. A senator serves for 6. That is how our American democracy works. And so President Clinton was elected twice. So he served a total of 8 years. And after the 1996 election, Senator Dole retired from elected service, but he continued to serve his country in many different ways. Now, here is my last question. It is important to work with all people, even if you may not agree with them all the time. Is this true or false? It's true. Hopefully, this is called the definition of bipartisanship. Cooperation or agreement or compromise between 2 major political parties. So it's important to work together for the good of our country. So do you have any examples of working together? We can see this a lot in different laws that take place, like this law that's on the bottom here, like food assistance programs, access to food, school lunch programs even. Americans with Disabilities Act. You may see this in your own school right now. And even Social Security, that fancy thing that adults talk about a lot. So it needs to have a bipartisan effort to get these things done. And Senator Dole's legacy can be seen throughout the museum and throughout the state of Kansas. And I have been fortunate to meet Senator Dole multiple times. And so here's a picture of us together a few years ago. But sad news, Senator Bob Dole did pass away at the grand age of 98 years old a few years ago in 2021, but he had over 70 years of public service to our country. And this is one of my favorite quotes, so I'll end with this. When we prioritize principles over party and humanity over personal legacy, we accomplish far more as a nation. By leading with a shared faith in each other, we become America at its best, a beacon of hope, a source of comfort in crisis, a shield against those who threaten freedom. So, now we've learned about a famous Kansan. How will you serve Kansas? So definitely come visit me in Lawrence. There's that beautiful stained glass window again. We have open museum hours, and you can learn more about this influential son of Kansas. So do you guys have any questions? Happy Kansas Day.
Sure. Here's a question. Just a question about, so Senator Dole was involved in some of the laws that we have in schools or for schools today?
Yeah, so the one that pops in my mind first is actually the school lunch program. So did you know that it's actually a federal law for you to have access to a hot lunch while at school? Now, that doesn't mean you have to eat hot lunch, but it is from the federal government. That is a mandate. It is a law. So that's probably one that you may see and encounter every day. But lots of different things too, like access to different parts of the building, especially for people of all abilities. Consequently, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay. Anything else?
Just a compliment that one class thinks that he's definitely a great Kansan.
Definitely a cool Kansan. Glad he's from Kansas. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. You're welcome to come visit us at the Dole Institute of Politics in Lawrence, Kansas. But thanks for joining us, and have a great Kansas Day.
Thank you, guys. Have a great Kansas Day. This was an awesome session. High five to you all. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.